Hey guys, welcome to the garage. I am working today on the Shelby GT350R. I'm going to be replacing and rebuilding the Girodisc two-piece rotors. If you've never done that, maybe this will be helpful. The great thing about a two-piece rotor is you don't have to replace the entire thing. You get to take the hat basically off the center of the rotor and replace just the ring around it. So we're going to do that today. We're going to get the car up in the air. I'm going to replace the rear pads and the front pads as well, but we're going to focus mainly today on just getting that Girodisc rotor rebuilt. And let's get it up in the air. Okay, I'm going to show you how I take off the Girodisc rotor. I'm going to replace the rotor disc, keeping the rotor hat. That's one of the great advantages of the two-piece rotors, that you can just replace part of it. Just going to have to take off the caliper. I've got caliper studs on here that I've replaced the stock caliper bolts, so the caliper pull is a whole lot easier. So we're going to remove those two caliper nuts, and then we're going to put on the caliper flexion sleeves so that we can easily take off the caliper. These nuts are torqued to 100 pounds, so it takes a bit of a bar to get off. There's also a washer on here. I was going to make sure you take off the washer before you put on the caliper flexion sleeve. We're also going to remove the two pins that keep the pads in place. It's just going to make it a little bit easier. And we're going to open up those caliper pistons with a caliper spreader, with our piston spreader. That's going to allow the caliper to come off easily. So now the caliper is loose. We use the sleeve, and it goes onto the existing caliper bolt. It does not come off. In the stock settings, the whole caliper bolt comes out, which then you have to replace each time because you don't want to malform that thing inside the caliper itself. So the sleeve allows you to not only have the caliper stud on there, so look at that slides right off, which gives you free access to the rotor. Now these get a little stuck right around here, right around the hub, which you're going to clean after we replace this. I put a little liquid wrench in there, a little penetrating oil. There's no, unlike many rotors, there's nothing holding this rotor onto the hub itself. It's just held on by the pressure of the wheel and the lug nuts. So we're just going to give it a few friendly taps. Loosens it up from the hub. And off she comes. We're going to replace this, leaving that. While we're here, I'm going to go ahead and take out the pads. And to do that, we just need to tap out. Have a little hole punch. We're going to tap out this pin, and that will allow the brake pad to come out. You can do this before you take the caliper off or after, but when you're putting them back in, you want to put them back in before sliding it back on. It's much easier to get the pads into the caliper without the rotor being in your way. There's no cotter pin or anything else retaining these slider pins. They're just retained by this spring clip here. A little bit of pressure on that brake pad. Out comes the pad and the heat shield. Pads are out. Those pads had a little bit of life left on them. They're maybe 5-6 millimeters, but they've got some heat cracking going on. We're gonna get some fresh pads. Okay, while we're in here, we're gonna clean this hub up just a little bit. Tend to get a little bit of rust. You want that hub to be nice and flat and debris-free for full contact with the back of the rotor hat. So I'm just using a wire brush basically to clean this up. Both on the flat face of the hub as well as around the extended lip here. So now with the rotor up on the bench, we can take a quick look at things. This rotor really doesn't have a whole lot of wear. You can see the sort of the wear bars on this versus the new one. There's the new one that came from Girodisc with all the hardware, nice and clean. You know, the thing that really stands out here is a little bit harder to see, but there's definitely some heat cracking going on this one. The bigger issue on this was that I was feeling uneven brake pressure, so I think I've got a bit of an out of round on this. I might have warped the rotor. Who knows what might have happened there, but it's not feeling right, and when you're out on track, that's not good. So we're going to remove all these bits of hardware. On this particular rotor, there's 12 of them. Every other one has a spring clip. There's a slightly different 25 versus 22 millimeter M5 bolt that goes on, and they explain that nicely in the instructions here. So they're all pre-assembled and ready to go. There's the ones with the spring clip and the ones without, and they just alternate. So now we just need the right tool to get them out, and we've got that. So this is a W4 little hex head on the end of that. It's got a 3/8 drive on it. So all we're gonna do is, that's my small torque wrench. I don't need that at the moment. I'll use that for putting it back together. But all we're gonna do is go around this, break them loose. They get torqued to 60 inch pounds, not 60 foot-pounds. And you need a smaller torque wrench to do that, so we've got that. So you see here, they require a little bit of a brake. Don't be afraid, you're not gonna break anything. So we're just gonna get all those opened up, go around. Won't make you watch all that. Okay, with all the M5 bolts now out of this side of the hat, you can see these bits here are the flat-sided sleeves that go in. It basically provides the thread. So those may still be in there and need to be tapped out. So I'm going to use a punch to do that. These are not being reused. There's a new set, so we don't have to be worried about them. They sit in there pretty tightly inside the combination of the hat and the rotor. Now the hat comes right off. Here it is. Get rid of the old rotor. I'm the guy that will happily dispose of them, takes them to the steel scrap yard. Don't throw them in your regular track. So now you see the backside. These are the sleeves that come out of there. we got all new ones. You see the flat side that sits right there on the hat, and that keeps the sleeve from turning and gives a place for the M5 bolts to go into. So you see the nice shiny new sleeves there, so we don't have to keep these. Pull those out of the hat. Then we're going to turn the hat over and we're going to clean the inside of it the same way we cleaned the surface of the hub on the car. Now we've got the hat cleaned up, bring over our shiny new rotor. And do note that these come left and right. This is a left rotor. Luckily, I did the right one already and didn't mix them up, so that's good. We'll open up our shiny new hardware parts. Also note that they have the flat-sided sleeves and that the washer that's on there is not a flat washer, but a domed washer, so don't take it apart and mix that up. Put it on the hat as is. They assemble it at the factory for a reason. Ask me how I know this. Actually did it wrong the first time, because they didn't come fully assembled back then. It's time to do. So we're just gonna line our hat up. Now I'm gonna start with the spring clip ones, so I keep them separated. So I got 6 spring clips, and I'm just gonna go around. I'm gonna take the sleeve off of this. I'm gonna slip that flat side right against the hat. Line one of these up at a time. So now we're just in the process of putting the first set of bolts and sleeves in there. So I'm starting with the ones with the spring clip. There are 6 of those and 6 of the others. And I'm going to put the bolts in every other. These are slightly longer than the other ones, so we don't want to get them mixed up. So I'm going to start with these 6. I already put a couple of them in there, but I kept these out to show you that on each one of these, you're just going to put a little thread locker blue. It comes with the kit, supplied by Girodisc. That was a little more than I needed. And on each one of these, we're going to put our thread locker blue. I'm going to come around the other side and get that started. I don't want to get it too tight because I need to eventually align that spring clip so it sits properly against the rotor. So that's what I'm going to do for each one of these. I will first put in the six spring clip ones, and then come back and do the other 6. So I've taken out the next 6 out of their sleeves, leaving their domed washers in place. I'm going to put thread locker blue on that, and I've got the flat-sided threaded sleeve to go right in here. Not easy to do one-handed in a camera. Okay, so there it is. That's how it sits in there, nice and flat. So as I finish off the sleeves, I'm going to then put some thread locker blue on each of these M5 bolts. Sleeves are all lined up correctly. A little blue, not much, don't need to overdo it. Just need to keep those from any vibration loosening. One goes in every other. And then we're going to tighten it down and torque it again. I mentioned 60 inch-pounds. That is listed in the instructions you get. Girodisc does a pretty good job giving you the instructions you need. I like that. Sometimes you get instructions that are hard to read. This one's pretty basic. So put that nice and flat. Use my M4 hex just to get everything straight away. Let me give you a close-up. I'm talking about these clips. So these little retaining clips, these spring clips, see, they'll spin while you're putting this on. So I'm gonna kind of hold that in place like that as I tighten each one of these down so that when it gets tight, that clip doesn't spin off its base. This is one of those specialty tools that you don't need too often, but when you need it, you need it. It's a 1/4-inch drive torque wrench. This one happens to be Nico Tools. Amazon purchase, I'm sure, a while back. Very small torque wrench in inch-pounds instead of foot-pounds. I've already got it preset to 60. Because these are so small, this one unfortunately comes in a 1/4-inch drive. So to fit my 3/8, I needed a 1/4 to 3/8 adapter. And now I can fit that on my tool. So we're just gonna go around. I'm gonna take one around before I get it to full torque. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and torque these. The click tells me we're done. So before we put our rotor back on, we're going to put in these fresh new brake pads. Let's see how much thicker they are than the old ones. These are G-lock pads. I've had very good luck with these on the Mustang. I'm going to install the heat shields, which I cleaned up, sanded down a little bit. The spring clip is still in caliper, so we're just going to insert this till it puts pressure on the spring clip, and then we're going to put the pins through the clips. Let's make sure you put your pad with the actual pad side inward. That's always a good idea. And again, it has to ask me how I know that. Discovered it quickly, but still felt pretty stupid. So you have to put a little pressure on the brake pad, towards the towards the outside of the caliper to get the spring clip where you need it to get. So you're going to install the pin coming through the back, through the heat shield, and the new pad inside. And then we're going to spread these a little bit with the caliper spreader to again make sure the pistons inside the caliper are fully retracted. One of the things I do beforehand is up on the brake master cylinder, I take the top off it just to make sure that as we're spreading the calipers, pushing fluid back up, that we're not going to bust a seal or anything. That's probably not necessary. It's not that much of a movement you're doing, but no point in taking that risk. Damaging something in your master cylinder. It won't do anything to you. It's not going to introduce air or anything to your lines. So once I get that lined up, I see the pin coming through through those two things. You'll see the full tip looks like the cone of a top of a spaceship coming all the way through. So just a little bit more, and you'll know that that pin is fully set. It's nicely set with the spring, and now we're going to use our caliper spreader from the inside against the inside of the brake pads. We're going to cause those pads to push the rotors. Excuse me, the caliper pistons back into their resting spot. Now you see the pads are fully engaged against the side. and we'll get the rotor. Slide our caliper all the way back on a handy dandy sleeve and get that rotor set. See, the caliper already wants to slide right back on. And you can see that it's turning nicely. Keep a little pressure on. No sound. There you go. Once that's set against it right there with the lug nuts, it'll all be good. We'll tighten down the caliper nuts and take it from there. First, we take these sleeves off. Take a look in there. See that the pads are matching up very nicely. Make sure there's nothing odd looking. So I put the nuts back on the caliper. Make sure there's the thick washer on there as well. And in case you're wondering, the socket for this, it's actually 9/16 SAE. It's not a metric, and it looks like it's, and I'm using it's a 12-point style because it's a 12-point style nut on there. So I've got my torque wrench set to 100 pounds. And that's quite a bit of torque on a smallish bolt, but so you might be surprised as you're pulling it. But the nice long torque wrench, you get to that 100 pounds pretty easily. Leverage is a good thing. A number of reasons I like these carbon fiber wheels on the Mustang GT350R Shelby. Primarily because they're pretty light. That would be a much heavier wheel than steel. Another tool plug, one of the greatest tools I ever bought. This Bosch lithium-ion 18-volt battery. This thing will last forever on a charge. I'm just taking these in to the lightest bit of pressure. No torque yet. I'll torque that when it comes down. Right side also completed. Fresh and new. It's all set to go. Last thing to do is get her off the quick jack. So, if you've never seen a quick jack before, this is how it works. I'm gonna lift it all the way back up so that extends, and then flip a little cam lock, and that's what's gonna allow it to come back down. So grab our handy dandy remote control. All the way to the top. Oops. Then you just flip this. So now that cam will slide over the lock points. Those are the safety lock points. So flip the cam on that side. Flip it on that side. So it's off the safety catch. And down she comes. And there she rolls. Hold on. That tells me my brakes aren't binding at all, that's for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and torque down the wheels. Just gotta get torque wrench set at 150 pounds. Pretty high torque on this. Well, that's it, all done. I just topped off the brake master cylinder with any fluid that might have been lost in the process and capped it back off. It's time to go out and bed the brakes in per the instructions from the pad manufacturer. I hope this was helpful to anybody who was thinking about replacing or refurbishing their two-piece Girodisc rotor. It's not that difficult, and hope this was helpful.